Okay, picture this. It's the year 490 BCE. The biggest empire the world has ever seen sends a massive invasion force across the sea. Their goal? To completely crush one small city-state that dared to defy them. This is the story of a battle that, by all rights, should have been a massacre. But instead, it became an absolute legend. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How could a handful of soldiers from one city possibly stand up to the world's greatest superpower? Well, the answer involves some serious military tech, incredible discipline, and one very risky gamble. So first, we really need to understand the two sides squaring off here. This wasn't just a battle, it was a collision between two totally different worlds. On one side, you have the Persian Empire under King Darius of Persia. These guys were the global superpower, controlling huge amounts of territory. They'd send messengers to cities demanding earth and water, which was basically a symbolic way of saying, surrender everything to us or we will wipe you out. And on the other side, you've got Athens, a small city trying out this radical new idea called democracy, where the citizens actually had a say in how things were run. They weren't fighting for conquest. They were fighting for their homes and for their freedom, and they absolutely refused to surrender. This massive difference between them was also totally reflected in how each army fought. So this wasn't just about who had more soldiers. It was a battle of two completely different military philosophies. The heart and soul of the Greek army was the hoplite. This was their standard foot soldier, and their name actually comes from their most important piece of gear, the hoplon, their big, round shield. Now, these weren't professional soldiers like we think of today. These were everyday citizens, farmers, potters, artists, who had to buy their own equipment to defend their city. And you gotta understand, these soldiers were basically walking tanks. Just think about this for a second. Between the bronze helmet, the breastplate, that huge shield, and a long spear, a single hoplite was carrying over 60 pounds of gear. That is heavy. They were built for one thing, and one thing only, getting up close and personal with the enemy. But a single hoplite, on his own, wasn't the real weapon. Oh no. The secret to Greek success was how they fought together in a formation called the phalanx. This was a super tight, disciplined block of soldiers, shoulder to shoulder, with their shields locked together. It was like the ultimate team sport, where trusting the guy next to you meant everything. So how did it work? Well, it was simple, but brutally effective. Each soldier's shield would cover the guy to his left, creating this solid wall of bronze. Then they'd lower their 8-foot-long spears, creating a forest of deadly points. When this whole formation moved forward, it was like a human bulldozer, a walking wall of death that was incredibly hard to stop. Now, the Persians fought a completely different kind of war. Their whole strategy was built around speed and attacking from a distance. They had tons of archers who would just rain down arrows to weaken the enemy. Their soldiers wore much lighter armor and carried wicker shields, which made them way more mobile. And critically, they had cavalry, soldiers on horseback, to sweep around the sides and cause chaos. Their army even included an elite force called the Immortals, because their number was always kept at exactly 10,000. If one fell, another immediately took his place. Okay, so this brings us to the battlefield, and the Athenian general, a guy named Miltiades. Now, he'd actually served in the Persian army before, so he knew exactly how they fought. He knew that just sitting there and waiting for the Persian attack was a death sentence. He had to do something totally radical. And when this signal was given, the Greeks did the absolute last thing the Persians expected. They started to run. In all that armor, weighing over 60 pounds, they charged across nearly a mile of open ground. To the Persians, it looked like they were insane. They had no archers, no cavalry. What were they doing? But Miltiades knew they had to cross that open field as fast as humanly possible to get out from under that deadly storm of Persian arrows. But that shocking charge? That was just the beginning. Miltiades had set up his phalanx in a really unusual way. He deliberately made the center of his battle line much thinner and weaker than normal, but he packed his best, strongest troops onto the sides or the wings. And the Persians, they took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Their best troops, including the Immortals, smashed into that weak Greek center and just started pushing it back with ease. The Greek line started to bend inward, like a bow. To the Persian commanders, it must have looked like victory was just moments away. They were walking right into a trap. What was happening here is a classic military maneuver that generals still study today. It's called a double envelopment. Basically, the idea is to let the enemy push through your weak center, only to have your strong sides fold in and attack them from both sides at once. like a giant pincer. And here's exactly how that trap snaps shut. Step 1, the Persian center pushes forward, thinking, hey, we're winning. Step 2, on the sides, the stronger Greek wings just demolish the Persian troops they're facing. And then, this is the brilliant part, Step 3, those Greek wings don't chase the guys who are running away. No, they pivot inward and slam into the sides of the Persian center. The trap was sprung. All of a sudden, the elite Persian troops were surrounded on 3 sides. They were trapped, panicked, and all crowded together so their bigger numbers meant absolutely nothing. Their light armor was just no match for the heavy bronze and long spears of the hoplites. The whole Persian formation just collapsed, and it turned into a desperate, chaotic scramble back to the safety of their ships, with the Greeks chasing them the entire way. The Athenians had won an impossible victory. But the impact of this one day goes so much further than just a single battle. So why are we still talking about Marathon 2,500 years later? Well, for one thing, it gave us a pretty famous sporting event. The legend says that a messenger, Phidippides, ran the entire 26 miles from the battlefield all the way back to Athens to announce the victory. He supposedly gasped out, Nike, which means victory, and then collapsed from exhaustion. And yeah, that incredible run is what inspired the modern marathon race. And just look at this chart. It shows you just how incredibly one-sided this victory really was. The Athenians lost only 192 soldiers. The Persians, they lost over 6,000. It wasn't just a win, it was a total rout. So when you put it all together, the legacy of Marathon is just huge. It proved that the mighty Persian Empire wasn't some unstoppable force. It saved that young, fragile idea of democracy in Athens, allowing it to grow into a golden age of philosophy, art, and science that literally shaped the world we live in. And it gave the Greeks the confidence they needed to stand up to the Persians again 10 years later. Which leaves us with one final massive question. If that thin line of hoplites had broken, if Miltiades' incredible gamble had failed, the world we live in today would look completely different. Those amazing ideas of democracy, philosophy, and theater might have been snuffed out before they ever had a chance to grow. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would our world be like if the Persians had won?